Go. Sean, you ready?
No, I'm ready. If you're ready.
I am ready.
All right.
Everybody's good. All right. So we'll go ahead and call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Tuesday, February 14th, 2023. We'll go ahead with the roll call.
Chairman Ryan Green,
Here.
Jesse Koppel,
Here.
Ben Lee,
Here.
Walter Rock,
Here.
Steve Dyer.
Here.
All right, we'll go with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll go ahead with public comment that is not on tonight's agenda. And take it we only have our applicants in the audience, so hearing no public comment, we'll go ahead and proceed to application Z-23-9, the zoning use permit for 57 South Main Street. All right, yeah, if we could have you come up. And staff wants to give us background on this. Sean, if you want to give us background on this?
Sure. So what you'll see here tonight is similar to some of the other applications that have come before the board over the last maybe 2 to 3 months.
Are we able to get it up on the?
Yeah. Let me pull it up here. Do you want the application?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it, please.
Give me 1 second.
Thank you.
See if I can walk and film at the same time. I don't have a lot of confidence in that, but I'll give it a shot. So, like I said, the applicant is proposing to do what has been done similarly with other applicants over the last 2 to 3 months. It is on the second story of a structure. I do want to call out the specific address for this parcel. I know there's been some confusion with the downstairs address as to what is the actual address. So from a bookkeeping standpoint, 51C. Okay, so 57 is the first floor, I believe. So that is not the area that's under consideration tonight. It is just going to be the upper portion of that.
Who assigned that address?
Yeah.
That's confusing.
That is.
Yeah.
It's, the 51C is not on the auditor's webpage.
Yeah, well, okay.
It's just, the address was given to that property years and years ago.
Yeah,
Post office, I assume.
Yeah.
that's probably true.
There's some odd things that happen with addresses in this city. This is yet another case
It's true.
that I noticed of it. Yeah.
Jim, what does the auditor say, have on it? Nothing on the second floor, or just one unit on the second floor?
It depends, each building's,
So if it's not there,
each building
you don't
seems to
have to
have a
do it.
different system.
So it doesn't exist.
All right.
Yeah, and this is a unique building because when you look at that from the street, but anyways, I'll let Sean continue,
No,
sorry.
yeah, I was
Doesn't exist.
We were about to
trying to buy time.
go, we were about to go down a rabbit hole there and I didn't wanna.
letting you
I
go
don't
while
wanna
I
go
got
down
it
that rabbit hole yet.
teed up. So, like I said, very similar to other like applicants. Some of the items I did want to point out, I'm not trying to be abrasive by any means. The application did borderline for me is being most of the way complete, but still lacking in a little bit of those items. I'd given an email to the zoning inspector, I believe on Monday, to kind of fill those gaps. To my understanding, he reached out to you all, so hopefully you'll be able to speak to some of those points tonight. Typically in an application, I like to have all that formally submitted in a written document. That way it's available for you to peruse over the weekend. So that's something we're working through. They're going to address some of the narrative. When we have a conditional use permit, there's a list of items that you have to work through. You will find those under 1131.02, application for conditional use. So working through those, hopefully they'll be able to identify that. I think the board will probably ask some of these questions, so I won't steal the thunder, but if you haven't, at the end of it, I can go back and revisit that. So other than that, that's kind of really the background that we have on this particular applicant as far as I'm aware of. So I'll let you take it away, Chairman.
All right, so if you'd like to give us some background on this and then we'll ask you a battery of questions.
All right, I'll be ready. So, I'm Scott Eric, this is my wife Jennifer Eric. Good evening. We Jennifer and I appreciate the opportunity to present our application to you this evening. Our family purchased this property in 2020 from John Nybarger. And we've really enjoyed being part of downtown and actually take a lot of pride in it. It's neat to own a building on Main Street. And so we've taken a lot of pride with that. We've actually become quite fascinated with the building's history. So I don't know if you guys, most of you may be long-term Johnstown folks, but that's actually was John Ashcraft's permanent residence for a number of years. He lived upstairs. The printing for the Johnstown Independent was in the building, and it was actually downstairs. And when we purchased the building from John Nybarger, he took me downstairs. He showed me where they load the paper to run it through the presses. And actually, I think the Johnstown Independent was founded in 1884. And then all the Ashcraft family owned it the whole time. And Mr. Ashcraft, I used that as part of his platform when he was in the political aspiration. So kind of neat from that standpoint. We have been able to find some photos. We were looking at the pictures back here. The farthest one we found is 1906. There's actually a cool one in Villa Pizza on the wall in there too. They have some nice history pictures in the buildings in there as well. So when we purchased the building, we had it been painted, we've done awnings, so continue to maintain the property. So during the time we've owned the property, we've continued to have more and more interest for people asking if there's short-term accommodations or furnished units available. I'm sure most of you know that it's rather common when you're traveling for business or events or seeing family or coming into the area, people are looking for a short-term place to stay. So with that got our wheels turning. Is this one of the units that we look for short-term housing? We talked to other properties on this other properties owners on Main Street who have short-term rentals. They told us there's a process. So we wanted to be in compliance with that process. We connected with Mr. Blair, who advised us of the application, answered our questions. We done the application, provided the notices, posted the sign, paid the $300 fee, and submitted all this for you for consideration of the application. Hopefully we'll be able to answer all of your questions here this evening because we want to follow the process and the rules and be in compliance. So the apartment, it is a little, it's a large building actually. The apartment's in a pretty cool spot. It's there's two separate entrances obviously to the building, one from Main Street, one from the parking in the back. There's a separate entrance upstairs. The side of the building is actually open. It looks right out over the Ghost Rider venue of their patio. You can see the City Hall. You're 3 doors down from the Horseshoe, and pretty much within walking distance to every building, coffee shop, service business in the community. So from that, I think there's a lot of appeal for people who want to travel to Johnstown or are looking for a place to stay. So with that, happy to answer your questions if you have any, which I think you do.
I approve.
All right. Okay, but that's awesome.
All right, so we'll start with Jesse. What questions do you have?
Sorry, I just try to add a little bit of humor into this. So we got a number of factual determinations that we'll have to make. So we'll roll through these. Will this be harmonious with the existing character of the vicinity? In my mind, I find that it would be, since we have some other second-story residential. And if you guys want to chime in, we can all run through these points together, right?
You're not changing the outside at all,
We're not.
just inside.
Yeah.
I think that would require a COA.
Yeah.
It's been.
Just making sure it's not on the
Apartment
plan.
unit, long-term, for as long as I've been able to find out. I know it has for us, for Mr. Nybarger, that goes back at least 25 years.
Seeks to maintain and will not be hazardous to health, safety, welfare. I don't think that's gonna be an issue. Will be served adequately by essential public facilities such as highways, streets, police, fire protection. It's currently a residential unit right now.
Long-term.
So I don't think that necessarily the nature of that will change drastically. Will not create excessive additional requirements for public facilities, services, and will not be detrimental to the economic welfare of the community. The only thing I see there, a little bit of burden on the public parking, but again, it's sort of the nature of that area.
Now, as far as parking, do you have any private parking on that?
Public parking like it's always been used there.
I was gonna say, I don't think you have any private parking on that.
It's
Yeah.
public parking, which it always has been. One thing about a short-term rental, there's people parked on the public streets for those units 365 days a year.
So maybe less of a
I
burden,
think,
you
because
think?
I would like to say that, you know, it's gonna be rented 365 days a year, but I highly doubt it, so I would expect that to be less, but that
It's a
property
fair
is-
argument. That's a fair argument. Will not involve uses, activities, processes, materials, equipment, or conditions detrimental to any person's property or general welfare. Excessive production of traffic noise. I assume that you'll probably have some noise guidance in your rental agreements, right?
Yeah,
Some-
we
Okay.
do, and it's right next door to an outdoor patio with a stereo system, so.
Will have vehicular approaches to the property, which shall be so designated as to not interfere with traffic or surrounding public streets or roads. I think that's pretty obvious. There's a huge parking lot behind it. Complies with other requirements or standards that are cited under specific zoning district regulations of this ordinance. I didn't see any conflicts with any other specific zoning ordinances. Did anybody else? Will be in accord with general objectives or with any specific objective of the strategic plan or zoning ordinances. I think that's sort of been in line with what the strategic plan has been for the downtown district. We've been approving second-story residences and second-story, we've given at least one second-story short-term permit. So I think that's, will not result in the destruction, loss, damage, or natural historic features of major importance. Again, you're keeping the structure and material the same condition it is now. Is a conditional use identified in the, as applicable to the zoning district, which we've reviewed that, and it is. So I think in my mind, you guys meet all those requirements. I'd like to make one distinction that, because we have a large GCC1 zoning district that includes the downtown, the old historic downtown commercial district, as well as some of the residential housing structures on South Main. And in my mind, this fits the downtown area much better than it does the housing area of the GCC1. So I just want to make a distinction for future projects in that I think that this fits the character of the downtown in my mind. So I don't have any other questions, Ryan.
All right. Any other questions? I know I have a few, but any
Yeah.
other questions?
Yep.
Go ahead, Ben.
Appreciate Jesse walking through the standards for consideration, 1131.03. I have a couple that I'm looking at here that I've interpreted maybe a little bit differently. If we look at C and D, which have to do with public facilities and really public facilities for both. I wanted Sean to bring up the application, if we could go to the floor plan, I think it's page
Sure can.
5. I had some difficulty with this, just trying to get my bearings, to understand exactly how this fit in, because for me, it's a nice floor plan. I didn't have any points of reference
Sure.
to, like, fit it on top. So
Okay.
if we look at the actual buildings themselves,
Yes.
does this go, I see 4 windows in the front.
Yeah.
So does this apartment stretch over 57 and 59?
No.
No.
Could you point out where Main Street is on
Yeah,
that? I
yeah,
think that
certainly
might
can.
help. Or
Okay, if you could maybe just zoom out a little bit.
Sure can.
Mr. King. So Main Street's right here. This is our property right here.
Right.
Okay. This is the front entrance you'd see from Main Street, and I have a few photos I'm happy to share with you. This is the back entrance.
Okay, is the front entrance, is it labeled the 59.5? Is that the front entrance? To the one with the canopy, 59.5, I think? No?
59 and a half, I think, is Ghost Rider. I think it's.
Okay.
Our
Yeah.
canopy in the
It's
front.
next to it.
The front door there is labeled 55.
Oh,
It's got the,
55,
it's got
okay.
the hair salons part one on one side, and I can't remember, there's a realtor brokerage, I think, just rented the
Okay.
Yep,
second
and
side of that.
This is left the key property.
If you look at it from the street, it looks like a one-story building, which is sort of the
Well,
trick.
I could see the second story, but I could see, at 59.5, I could see stairs going up. So that's why I was having trouble.
Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah.
I
Yeah,
could see the stairs on the drawing, but I'm like, Ben, I was gonna ask the same question.
It's
Where-
an interior,
That's this building
yeah.
right here, there's 59 right there,
okay.
which is an open courtyard.
Okay, gotcha.
This is Larry Schaefer's office. The apartment is right here that overlooks, this is Ghost Rider's new facility that actually we own 2.5 feet of, because when they built it, that's on us. So our patio is right there and it overlooks. If you're at Ghost Rider's patio, you look up those windows, you'll see right there.
Okay.
Oh, those are the windows.
Yeah.
So this is the apartment? Is that what you said?
That is the apartment, yes, sir. Yep. So flat roof here.
Yeah,
New roof that we put on back here,
Okay.
and that is that apartment. The other side of the building has other units. There's 9 units in that
yeah,
building.
okay. So then the primary entrance and exit are from the rear only?
That's the way I would think people would come. No, they could come any other way. There's a hallway that runs through that entire.
But the only access to that unit, Ben, is through the interior stairwell by the back door, right?
Two.
There's 2 accesses.
So that's what I had trouble with too,
If you
that,
walked in the back door, which here's the canopy to the back
Right.
door, you take immediate left, and then you walk up
Where
these
is
stairs,
this?
and the property, you turn right, and now you're in.
is that this exit?
Okay?
That's main hallway then.
Happy to pass these around.
The other stairs go to the main hallway?
They do, again,
They're about halfway through the building?
You got it.
Okay.
yeah, there's a side entrance that goes into the realtor's office for John. There's another small hallway then that goes up to the 2-story part of the structure where there's 2 other residential properties. up there.
All these 4 windows face the patio that you
All the
mentioned?
windows face the patio, yes, sir.
Okay.
There are bedroom windows.
Yes.
Yeah, there are, yes.
Well, over here.
And I just want to take, while we're talking about the use of public facilities, Ben, if I could just take a moment to interject also that there are some festivals and things that go on in this back parking lot that might obscure the parking from time to time. Just want to make you aware that in case you're not, that hopefully, that just comes along with using that. Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting because I mean, as I was driving around, obviously from Main Street, you're sitting there looking at it from Main Street, going, "Where's the second floor on this thing?"
Right, because it's a flat roof.
Yeah.
But if you climb up on that roof, there's a pitched roof in the back.
Yeah, and as I drove around back, I'm like, "Well, I see where the second floor is, but
Yeah.
from Main Street, like I've been in there very few times,
Yeah.
and that's what I was wondering
It's
too."
interesting, those floors are
Yeah.
solid 5 inches of concrete.
And that's what I was thinking, looking at this, like, where's the front? Where are the front stairs? Okay,
So
Okay.
this
so
here.
it makes more
So
sense.
this,
That's
on,
walking in the back door, so if you're holding that picture there, sir,
yeah,
if you walk in the back door, you're gonna take immediate left and go up those steps.
so that's the alternate exit that we have listed on the drawing.
That's the main exit, that's the main entrance.
That's the
The
main.
alternate exit is back here, and that comes down in the middle. This is the main, right here.
Okay,
So you're gonna walk in these doors right here. You're downstairs, you're gonna walk up the steps. Now you're into the
Got it.
main
so
main.
these are.
There's a lawyer there, isn't there?
Yeah,
So this is,
Lawyer right inside.
Yeah,
the
there's like 2 lawyers and a title and a
okay,
correct. And then this
couple
is
of, there's like, and then
upstairs.
there's like 2
This is
salons,
actually where the flat
something
roof
like that.
starts. You could come
It's
out,
two of
and go back
everything.
downstairs, take a right, and then you'll be
Two
at
park.
the
My competition.
hallway.
Yeah, there's another title in there.
So
That's how I know so much about it, because I've
but
been
you've got
spying on
a
them.
one-story building out in
Yeah,
front, right?
mhm, that's the flat roof. Ghost Riders over there.
All right, that gives me perspective.
Yeah, okay, no problem. Took me a while to figure it out too.
I will say this too, the stairways.
Thank you.
The stairway is very well done coming in the back.
It's nice,
But,
it's wide, it's
uh,
concrete.
Congressman Ashbrook had that all redone, and it's.
That's what I was gonna say, Ashbrook, yes. I had that note too, Ashbrook,
There's a fireplace in there that's about
yeah,
12 feet long on the second floor.
okay.
How wide are the stairwells?
Ben, what other questions
Oh,
did you
4
have?
foot.
Because I wanna make sure you get a chance to,
Yeah, for sure.
There's a picture, probably been a long time.
Yeah,
but those of you since
you'll
you
probably have a lot of the
photo,
same ones I have.
But there's a picture of the stairwell.
Yeah, I saw the picture, but sometimes it's hard to know the perspective because.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Are these pictures able to be submitted as a part?
Sure, yes.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah,
I
no
appreciate
problem.
that. As it relates to then, item C and D, trash.
Yes.
What is the situation with the trash?
There's dumpsters out in the back. We have our own dumpster as well as Ghost Rider and the auto service center and Horseshoe.
So you all share that same,
They share this spot,
We have a separate.
yeah.
but you're within that enclosure?
Yes.
That three-walled enclosure?
We're to the right of the
Yeah.
enclosure.
Oh, so you're outside of the enclosure?
That's
itself.
correct.
Okay,
Ghost Rider built that enclosure on your property.
yeah, yep,
Right.
okay.
So, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
No, they did at our
Yeah,
request.
I'll wait till the end.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there is an agreement in place for the sanitation, because that was gonna be one of my questions. So there's an enclosure that is used by the neighbors, but you guys are outside of that.
Yes. we
And then
are-
you have an agreement for one dumpster with two other businesses, or?
No,
how does
ours is,
that?
ours is
Okay.
only for our building,
Okay,
because it was out of control and we want to be responsible. to have
okay.
our own.
And then the other businesses that are on the first floor are using that too,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes,
Okay,
sir. As they always have. Yes.
all right. Go ahead, Ben.
Part of me is leaning toward asking for that dumpster to be enclosed, as we asked
Right.
Ghost Rider as well, just for consistency of safety and aesthetics to a certain extent, but more so just controlling the area and controlling the space.
So, and that would also apply to the automotive store that has theirs in the parking lot as well? Would they be required to build an enclosure?
I would think that if they came to us for a similar type of request that allowed us the latitude to discuss that, that would be a part of that conversation.
Okay.
I don't know how that agreement with respect to how they're operating now works into historical agreements, their operation now.
Okay.
We only get to put the screws to you when you need something from us.
I would not say it like that, but no, this is, this is similar to the other applications that we've had for
Yeah.
this type of thing. We've been right down the board with everybody, so.
Yeah, it's an improvement to the area
Yes.
and the entire scope of what is looked at as a part of that conversation.
Ben, there's two more dumpsters that have always been there. It's one, Bush Schultz Hardware, which is now Ace. It is not an enclosure. And then Bars Automotive, as he mentioned, is not an enclosure.
And both of those businesses
we don't
are
want them in the
operating
same spot?
In the same capacity
Oh.
and operating. there.
Imagine we don't
Yeah.
want them all in the
Okay.
same spot.
Yeah,
It would be nice to have them,
it would be nice, yeah,
Other-
that was, yeah.
yeah.
If we're building it, maybe we could, if at the recommendation, I mean, if we're gonna make an enclosure, I can make it 12 feet wide to stick our dumpster in and somebody else that can do the other, but if there's appetite, I'm happy to work
Yeah,
with the other business units to make the enclosure to hold all the dumpsters.
And I think that's,
You could do
that's a
that.
conversation
Not
I
make the
believe
wall.
that we had with Ghost Rider with
Chamber
respect to
of
them
Commerce
building
disclosure.
theirs. Potentially, I don't remember, but with those types of agreements, in my opinion, that's best left up to the business owners in that space to have those conversations. I wouldn't say that we would shy away from that and encouraging that, because we like cooperative
Yeah.
engagement in that respect, especially when it would help beautify and organize a space that is so frequently used, especially as that downtown space, so.
Sure. I
Absolutely.
respect that.
We touched on parking with F, and it does fall within the municipal lot, so that's perfectly fine. We talked about the entrance and exit, so I understand that. Relative to the rest of the 113103 and the standards, everything else fits in my respect, so I don't see anything out of compliance, and we've talked about some of those here. I think my hang-up is 113102, which is the application. I think that Sean alluded to a little bit of that as well. There's some pieces for me that aren't fully complete. I think the pictures are good because that will help with a couple questions in terms of what the thought process is. I only saw Ghost Rider listed as a neighbor.
There's 5 properties that were sent contingency letters.
There were?
None of them is-
And none of them responded,
No.
They
okay.
weren't listed on the application though, correct?
No, they weren't listed.
We were asked to put contiguous property owners. The only property owner on that wall was Ghost Rider and you as the city. I don't know the distance, but when we said the connecting properties, I viewed that, and I can certainly amend the application, but.
You're talking to 51C specifically.
Yeah, so,
I see.
and but I think Mr. Blair adjusted by that by
Yeah.
notifying the 5 that he felt were qualified. But we
Yeah.
did.
There's,
That's
the
fair.
But it's not.
chiropractor office Casey, straight across the street. Amanda Cox, who owns the Fit Zone, 559 South Main LLC, Ghost Town Property, and that's it. And I got one more here. No, that's it, that's the ones. So whenever I get an application, I go to the auditor's webpage and zero in. Sometimes I can understand why people don't put them on, they're not sure. You'll find where two back lots touch, but they're not lined up with each other because of the shape of the property. So I just blanket the whole area.
Okay, and to that, I don't disagree with that. I think for me, when you look at the applications, it's not only an informational gathering tool so much as it is a snapshot as well of what was done to fulfill that. So at the very least, I would ask that some of these items that we're talking about, if everybody else is in agreement, are part of the conditional aspect to update the application to reflect these. The picture being one, as well as the addresses to which the letters were sent.
And the
Because I think
narrative.
that's important, because if we go back and somebody has a comment or a call out, we can say, look at the application, and say, well, you were sent a letter, whereas here, I would just say,
I have a-
well, Ghostwriter was only sent a letter.
I have a picture of that, Ben, on OpenGov. I attach a copy, so there's the actual letters that are sent out as an attachment on each of the OpenGov addresses for conditional use. So they would be there if you had to find out the history of that particular permit.
How does what you did on OpenGov relate to somebody searching history on this application itself?
There isn't any other way they could search for it anyhow. They'd have to have the right to go into OpenGov to research it. But if someone was requesting the information is there on OpenGov under that address.
Under that address, but not a part of the application.
Right.
So I would still say the application.
So if you pulled a public records request on just the application, though, that's what you're gonna get.
That would be true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's where the completion aspect of the
Right.
application to me has a
Well, you'd have to still ask for the attachments because the other things here are attached. They're in separate files. They're just, it's all done through attachments.
well, they are, but the properties are listed specifically on the application itself.
Yes.
Right.
So that's I think the snapshot that maybe we're missing. I may be able to see that with respect to the pictures, but I think the addresses to which the letters were sent are important to have as part of that application.
And historically, I mean, you've seen how these applications come in. I don't know if you've seen this, but we have. We have a lot of I want to do whatever my neighbor did. Seems to be a common thread. So if we're doing it for one, we have to do it for everybody. Because a lot of people come in and just say, hey, look, my neighbor did it, I want to do whatever they did, and yeah. As we're working down the street, so these are a popular item.
We'll also
Um,
the trash
So
and the update, right?
any other questions that you had, Ben?
Yeah, the last piece is the narrative. So if you look at 113102C, a narrative statement evaluating the effects on adjoining property, discussion of the general compatibility with adjacent and other properties in the district. Typically, what we see is a narrative that, sometimes it's straight verbiage, like a paragraph. Sometimes people go and answer by question, 113103A through J, just because they know that those are the questions that we will be referencing when we're looking to evaluate the application. But the narrative piece definitely helps me in going through the evaluation process to make sure that we're on the same page with how the application is submitted, how the questions are looked at, and then when we review them and approve, deny, or approve with condition, that we're all on the same page with what's being referenced as a part of that. So the narrative to me is probably the biggest piece that is missing in my opinion.
Okay. Any other, is that the conclusion of your questions?
So, it is.
Okay. Steve, Walter, anything?
That's all.
Okay.
Steve, go ahead. Okay. Is the apartment rented now?
Yes.
Okay. In relation to that second floor, because I don't have x-ray eyes and things, you said there's potentially 9 units in there. Are any of those rented?
There's 6 commercial units, 3 residential.
Okay.
The other 2 residential are on the other, what I call the other building. Those are both rented,
Okay.
long term.
Okay, so those are rented. So what future, do you have any future plans for any of that? Or, I know we're just looking at this, so I'm looking at, what potentially might happen in the future, what in your eyes?
I mean, if this was a home run and I rented it 365 days a year, I may want to consider one of the other properties for that. The problem with it, which I think we may find in the marketplace, is they're big. Mr. Ashcraft's apartment's like 1,800 square feet. It's like
Yeah.
renting a house up there. I don't know if I could make the numbers work to do that, but
Right.
that would be a potential. Would I want to
Okay.
do that? It would always be residential, whether it be 365 or short term. I would never put a commercial business upstairs. Obviously, there's no access.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, just trying to get an understanding for where you're at and where you're going with the future. So
Sure.
that's good, that's helpful. Yeah, a more detailed drawing would have been helpful because I had a lot of difficulty, like Ben and others, in trying to ascertain what you have. So, if you had a little bit beyond what you had there, a reference to exactly, okay, here's Main Street or here's the main parking lot, and bring that in, that
Okay.
would have helped. And, if you do something in the future, I think that would be helpful
Okay.
for this board because
And I-
we typically only get it a few days ahead, so.
We provided with a floor plan for that specific.
Yes,
unit.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely
And I
needed, because
understand that,
we've got
because
less
it's
than that in the past, so,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a start, but I'd like to see more, okay, because, it's a little difficult staying on Main Street looking, it looks
this
empty
at?
there, yeah.
Okay.
So that's why I went toward the other side, thinking, well, maybe it's over there, so I was confused.
Yeah, okay.
So, okay.
Did you find it when you walked down there looking?
Well, I kind of saw something in the back here, but I figured, well, maybe, I could see the stairway over here in the next building. I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of where the sign was over towards that direction too as well,
But
so,
Put it on Main Street.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I understand that's where you see it and that's where it was.
Right.
Okay, I think that covers what I need to cover. Thank you, sir.
All right, anything from Steve?
No, the trash was answered. The patio, the 2-foot patio, there's no contention there, is
No,
there?
we have an easement.
It's not, like, okay,
Yeah, we came to an easement agreement.
okay.
Yeah.
As long as that's not gonna become an issue.
No.
And the owners to get in, they're gonna be able to get in the main doors. That doors are always unlocked.
They are.
Perfect. So there's no issues.
My main questions on this, well, I'll open to Sean first. Did we answer everything?
There was a couple housekeeping items that I did want to just track
Okay.
through. Just to clarify, and I know the answer, but I want to clarify it on the record. So this is just for one unit?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Parking, it looks obvious, but I like to have it on record as well. You're utilizing the public parking lot that is owned by the city in the back for the parking for this particular transient business?
It would be street parking. They could park wherever they chose. They might park at their neighbor's house down the street, they might park in the public parking lot, they can park wherever, it would be public parking. I'm not gonna designate to say that's the parking place, would be the answer to that?
So the,
Public parking?
so the reason I ask is typically there's a requirement from a business standpoint that there's so many parking spots allocated for a general use.
Okay.
And so part of that requirement exists in such a way that you have to have access to a public parking spot,
Okay.
or you have to have and provide your own parking spot. So the reason I'm asking the question is just to make sure that you're identifying the requirement as being met
Yeah.
through the city's parking lot, which is totally fine.
Okay.
I just want to have that on record, that is the
That would be
justifiable parking in the area that will be utilized to satisfy the parking requirements.
That would be our intent, yes, sir.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
See, like I
Appreciate
said,
that.
all housekeeping.
Okay.
Trash receptacle. This one did alarm me a little bit. I'm getting caught up on some things that I'm not aware of, so I apologize, and the board, I think, is going to fill me in on some things. So the trash receptacle that you currently have, it sits on city-owned property?
All of them are.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting in the sense that it can be, if we don't have some type of an agreement drafted between the user of that trash receptacle and the city, whether it be for an insurance or liability standpoint. So now that I'm notified about this, I will be tracking it, not just with you, but with all the entities that are utilizing city property to put their trash receptacle. So I think at some point, we're gonna have to form some type of easement or lease agreement. There's probably gonna have to be some type of indemnification to where we're not liable. If an accident were to occur, you need to hold insurance on that area. All these things that you walk through anytime you lease a building, I'm sure. That'll be something that you'll probably see coming down the pipeline, and I just want to put that as a placeholder right now. Sounds like we're going to work towards putting in a trash enclosure. And with that, I will put the caveat, we'll work towards doing that as well as some type of an agreement that holds the city harmless for any injuries that would happen. I can go through the multitude of list of God only knows what a trash truck can do or not do in an area. So we'll get something worked out there. I do want to make this a provision that there is an agreement that needs to be worked out with the city, if that's okay, for a condition that is put on this. Not saying it won't. I think we'll work through this. I just
Okay.
got to protect the city from a liability. And to point out, another great call out that you had, and more of a question for you, and it's not related to this, so I do apologize. Is that the trash receptacle here that you were identifying that's not enclosed? Is that where that trash receptacle's at, that you're identifying for this particular business?
Yeah, that, I think that's it. It's up here usually.
Okay.
I think it's
on the, if it's by Ghost Riders, it's on the other end.
No, this is the one, this is for the
Ours.
auto shop.
Bars.
Right.
left just a little bit.
So Bars Auto is where? You're saying?
That's
It's,
that one.
you're.
That's bars right
pulling it
there.
off. It's in the
Okay.
It's
corner.
somewhere in there.
So this is.
That white thing there,
Yeah,
right at
and
the
then
corner
if
is
you
bars.
Scroll up here,
Now, I know the other one typically,
for Ace, it's right here.
and that one does sit on private property.
Okay.
So that, from a city standpoint, makes me feel better.
Okay.
And this one does sit on private property. However, to your point, the requirement of it being inside of a closure is a new requirement. It's not a new requirement. It's been around for quite some time. If you've been in Johnstown for a while, you realize that Ace has been there probably, not Ace, but Shaw's Hardware has been there probably before the zoning code was written. So they're
least
probably
50 years.
grandfathered in. Why Bars Automotive was never required to put in any type of enclosure, I'm not sure. It's probably gone by too long now to do any type of enforcement, but know that anybody moving forward with any type of trash receptacle will be required to have it in an enclosed dumpster. So I don't want to make you feel isolated to where we're picking on you. This will be a general requirement from everyone. So you bring up a very valid point.
So, just like doing.
Sure.
Like the downtown area?
Yes.
So you go in the back alley,
Yeah.
behind the other side?
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's not go down.
Well, I mean, that's, you have dumpsters. up
You're
and down
exactly
your
right.
property.
Yeah.
So hopefully you address the entire, because it's a disaster back there.
With new applicants, we have. With new applicants that have asked for new things over there, we have.
That's a challenging.
Oh.
Now, and just this dumpster, is that, I know there's a dumpster back there, and it's supposed to sit on private property, but it
Yeah,
meanders
it's-
into the street sometimes, I'm
it's
quite
just-
sure.
Yeah.
And then all the other little totable ones, that has been a contention of mine, and there's probably some record about 6 years ago, whenever I gave some hesitation to allow for particular uses
Yeah.
because they didn't have access to a trash receptacle that didn't sit on public land. I didn't get any support on that, so I was on an island, but here we are. And you bring up a great point that makes me feel happy that I stuck to my guns. So, I would agree. Let's see. Another question that I had, trying to understand the transient business. So what we have defined as a transient business in the city code is a sleeping accommodation. So is this going to be a situation where you have a staff person that comes in, changes the linens, changes the trash receptacles, changes the, kind of a cleaning service on a weekly basis? Or is that the responsibility of the temporary transient person that's leasing?
It's a short-term rental.
Okay,
So the short-term transient is less than 30 days, right?
correct.
Yeah, so we would intend to have a service that would be responsible for that.
Okay.
Or us, probably me, taking out the trash. and that's what we-
Great. No, and that helps me understand. The last applicant that we did have in here, that was addressed to them in the prior one, more like a hotel service where they stay there for a night or two.
Yeah.
The sheets are provided, all the towels and things of that nature are provided. So, and I bring that up because I want to distinguish what this is and what it isn't. What this is it's a transient business that has all those amenities provided. This is not a situation where we're leasing something out for a short period of time rather than doing a long-term rental. So like I said, I like to clarify what it is and what it isn't, so that way we're all on the same page when we walk through this exercise with other applicants. So sounds like you're on point with having all of the furnishings.
Yes.
This isn't where they bring in their stuff, stay for, a month, and then gather all their belongings, put it in a U-Haul, and truck out of town like the
It's fully
circus.
furnished- Fully furnished with
Yeah.
sheets and.
We're developing precedent in this area, and that's why there's a lot of extra discussion that you probably weren't expecting.
Short-term
But
rental, bring your own stuff.
we're trying to, yeah.
That'd be cool.
You'd be surprised what will be tried, okay? So
Executive suite, right?
Only in Johnstown.
I don't want a U-Haul backing up to, and the reason being, I don't
Twice a
want a
month.
U-Haul backing up to a location, twice a month or once a month where all these things get trucked up a stairs and then they all come back out, and then you've got, blockage of alleys and things of that nature. So if you're tracking, this is why it's relevant. It does affect the environment of everything else around it, and the less impact we can have on that, the more harmonious it's going to be with the rest of the environment around it. So I actually wrote down trash receptacle twice, just by the alarming of it, but I'll get through that in my own little world. That is all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Well, everybody had great questions. I still had a few, kind of along with what Sean said. Do you have a minimum stay at all on these?
I have not.
Okay, because I know in the past, we did a lot of research on Airbnbs.
Okay.
And,
I'm not sure if it's gonna be that.
well, one concern that a lot of people had is people in and out overnight, bachelor party, something like that, trash the place, run down to Ghost Rider and have a party and come back. So I know minimum stays, and in other cities, we haven't done that here yet, but other cities have instituted minimum stays, like 3 days, things like that, to kind of cut down on that. I know a lot of owners have done that on their own, just because if you have a minimum of 3 days, obviously you make more money. People staying there 3 days are less likely to come in and trash the place and roll out the next morning. So that was one question I had. Kind of along that vein, parking, trash, obviously are mine. Fire code's the next one. I saw 2 entrances there. But is that something that you've addressed at all? Were there renovations that you guys had to do or anything to meet fire code, anything like that from? Okay.
We put paint on it, flooring,
Okay.
countertops, but there wasn't any renovation.
So there were updates from what you had before, just as a standard rental?
Painting.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
just countertops.
Those are my main questions that I had left.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add one more.
Sure.
I forgot to mention, and I want it to be not as a shock, but at some point, we do have a transient,
Tax.
yes.
Yes.
That's awesome, 6%, you guys are gonna bring in some money.
Well, eventually.
Eventually, yeah.
I don't have to pay it? You don't have any way to collect it?
I don't know that I want to admit to that.
Yeah, I wondered how I was gonna pay it.
I'll let
So-
Sean finish.
So-
Get trash enclosure.
I'm glad Sean brought that up in a zoning meeting,
Right.
but
Well, what I do want to make you aware of it, and in that same breath, we are currently not going through the exercise, and I'll preface and say currently. There could very well be, once we get a finance director situation in place, that this will come online. However, we're not going to ask for documentation from
Okay.
now until, let's say it's a year from now, the whole backlog of records. We will notify you.
Okay.
We'll say, hey, we actually have somebody in place that can start to track these items. We're going to ask that you now be compliant, and it sounds like you're already aware of it.
Yes.
Which makes this conversation much easier. If you weren't, I didn't want it to be a surprise in 6 months whenever you get a notice saying, by the way, you've got to do all this, and you say, hey, you never notified us. That's not how we want to do business. It's not how we want to operate. So at this point, look at it that way, that you can take that money that you would pay and put that into that excellent trash enclosure and lease agreement that we're going to come up with. And then moving forward, at some point, we'll obviously have that in place, and then it sounds like you're well aware of it. So that's all I had, Mr. Chairman.
yep, Steve has one more thing.
Something
I have one more thing too.
something I run
Ben has one more
into
thing, and
is,
then I have one more thing, and then we'll try to have a vote.
I'm not asking where you live. You guys live nearby?
We have multiple properties in Johnstown.
Okay.
Sunbury.
So do you have a management company? Do you have any employees who would manage this property, say when you're away from, like if you go on vacation? So, yeah. Okay, good. So I just want, if you're gone and you have somebody refuse to leave and another person coming in, it's more like a hotel, so you
I juggle
can.
because we have long-term rentals, so every disaster, bachelor party, crazy situation you guys can think of, we've dealt with that over the last 20 years.
Good.
We have a plan.
Okay.
That sounds
Still
good.
not- Still times you can become shocked, but we do have a plan, yes, sir.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
So you can mitigate that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
My other question, and just because it has been a part of other applications in a similar vein, but we haven't really touched on it with this, is this, and I think it's self-explanatory based off of the drawing, that this is wholly within the second floor
Yes.
of this structure. So there's nothing on the first floor that is related, there's no, other than the entrance and the stairway going up. It's wholly contained
There's no
within.
common area, nice
within the-
banquet room or anything like that.
Okay,
No, sir.
because that was part of previous conversations that we've had about that. So this is wholly self-sustained within that second floor with the exception of the entrance and exit to get up there. Okay,
Yes.
perfect, thank you.
I will say, even though this application wasn't 100% complete, I will say it's been one of the better ones that we've had pertaining to this type of business.
Thank you.
So I don't always throw the completeness of the application at the applicant. I mean, we do ask a lot of questions.
Yeah.
That's a little bit more staff and us housekeeping, I think. But, yeah, I think this went a little bit further than what they have before. So, with that, and barring any other questions, I'll go ahead and,
I just have one thing I want to say. East Square, they are probably the best ran apartments in Johnstown. All your apartments, and I think Teresa would know, dealing with water and sewer, and we always get 100% cooperation. So we thank you for that.
It's been a fun ride.
I think the history that you have in town too lends a certain amount of credibility to
Thank
what
you.
you're doing and bringing that
We
up.
take a lot of pride into it. We've been here for 8 years, and you guys know some of the places that we've purchased. I do think we take a lot of pride, and we find people that take pride in our property. That's the key. You gotta find the people that respect what you do, and they all want to be part of a nice place, and those that don't fit, they don't get to stay.
Yeah.
And it's good to have the cooperation of the city and the village. And we actually have one of the police officers that lives in one of our places, and that's very helpful too.
yeah.
Can I add before, because I know you're going towards.
Do you want to add the condition?
Well, I can add the condition, but what I might ask, because I really stress to have the narrative as a part of this application.
Sure.
Do you feel comfortable verbally answering the questions associated with 113103? And then putting that into writing and having that as a part of the condition is to update the application with that narrative.
We'll take the steps that you ask us to do.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
If you feel comfortable, I don't know, do you have a copy of that you can reference?
Answer the questions now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'd like to do that. Thank you.
I'll give you mine.
I can pull it up on the screen if you'd like.
Okay. Hey, so I'll read you the questions?
Sure.
All right, I'll read you the questions. So A, will be harmonious with the existing intended character of the general vicinity, and that such use will not change the general character of such area. The answer is, it will not change. It's always been an apartment, and will continue to be an apartment, just different lengths of stay. Letter B, seeks to maintain and will not be hazardous to the health, safety, and welfare of the existing neighborhood and the community. The answer to that is no. It's going to continue to be a residential apartment. Will be served adequately by essential public facilities and services such as highways, streets, police and fire protection, drainage structures, refuge disposal, water and sewer, and schools, or that persons or agencies responsible for the establishment of the proposed use will be able to provide adequately any of such services. The answer is that, yes, we're currently doing it for 365 days a year. We're just asking to do it short term instead of long term. D, will not create excessive additional requirements for public facilities and services and will not be detrimental to the economic welfare of the community. That is, it will not create excessive requirements, and we believe it'll actually be an economic benefit to the community. That would be The answer to D. E will not involve uses, activities, process, materials, equipment, and conditions of operation that will be detrimental to any person, property, or general welfare by reason of excessive production of traffic, noise, smoke, fumes, glare, or odors. Again, the answer to that would be it will not. It's going to be a single-family dwelling. Will have vehicular approaches to the property and shall be so designated as to not interfere with traffic on surrounding or public streets or roads. It's currently used as a residential property with access to the municipal parking lot. Complies with any other requirements or standards that are cited under specific zoning district regulations of this ordinance. The answer to that would be yes. Will be in accord with general objectives or with any specific objective of the strategic plan and the zoning ordinance. Yes, based on the district we're in. Will not result in destruction, loss, damage, or natural, scenic, or historic features of major importance. It will not. I actually think it will allow people to enjoy those natural and historic features of the downtown. Is the conditional use identified in the applicable zoning district? The answer is yes.
Yep, I think that's all.
100%.
All right.
All right.
I appreciate you indulging us with that rendition of 1131.03. So,
Amen.
you're now indoctrinated in code. And with such, we will go ahead and, we'll make the motion to approve with the condition, do we have to make the condition for the refuse receptacle?
The four conditions that I have, I'll read you.
Oh, you, okay.
It's to amend the application to include the pictures. Amend the application to include the addresses to which the notices were sent. To include the narrative in a written form that we just went through. And to enclose the trash receptacle on city property, as well as engaging in an agreement for the building of, the maintenance of, and the use of said trash receptacle
That's-
on city property.
Seemed like more than 4. Or did I count wrong?
You counted wrong.
It's four.
It's 4, number 4 is long.
So the trash one was just one.
Number
The
4 is
agreement wasn't
number 4 is a
separate?
two-parter.
Number 4 is, yeah, it's like 1A.
Number 4 is a two-parter.
I say we separate those two out, if you don't mind.
That's fine, they're all
They seem
important to me,
independent.
that's fine.
Yeah. The trash is the most important to me.
Well, the agreement makes sense, to Sean's
Yeah.
point, to make sure to have that.
That
on
needs to
record.
be done because it's great when you own it. It's not great when you sell it in 20 years. and
clarification.
Somebody else has to deal with it. That's what
Is it-
always happens.
Is the
You
applicant
have trouble with it
gonna
later
submit
on.
the written amendment to the application, or is staff gonna transcribe that? What's the plan on accomplishing that?
I'll put it in, the actual, application, I'll add it to it.
With the,
I can do that.
with the letter.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll conditionally approve with
Okay.
those items to be added after the fact.
I appreciate it, Jim. I would ask the applicant to do that, if that's okay with you guys, please. Just to submit it, just so that it's updated, because if you look at the ordinances themselves,
Right.
and you've supported everything.
It's a very specific
No, I
rules that
understand.
we require.
When you get down to legalities, if there were any
I'm
issues
gonna-
down the
I'm
line,
gonna
we
take
want.
The application, and I'm gonna
Right.
write in the 5 addresses
Yeah.
to Jim. I have no
That's
problem doing that.
standard. We always ask the applicants to do it, or, you know.
So-
Is it within 300 feet, or is it border contingency?
So I believe it's border contingency.
Where it's contiguous, yes.
Yeah,
it
where
has
it's-
to be-
where it's
If
contiguous,
across the
yeah.
street,
Yeah, we
Yes.
have to go across.
Yes.
That's contiguous?
It's considered contiguous because
Property
of,
lines in the middle of the road?
yes, because of a public right-of-way can't separate the contiguous.
Yeah, absolutely.
Contiguousness.
And
So I'll write down those 5 things, and we'll get it back to
The,
Jim.
the biggest point is because the burden of proof in the application is on the applicant.
Right.
Okay.
And from a service perspective, appreciate what Jim is doing and don't want to downplay that, because it's appreciated and it's a service that we try to provide, but still trying to make sure that we are by the book and what it says, because again, to Jesse's point, to Sean's point, it's precedence and how we approach everything going forward. And I think it's especially important in terms of conditional applications, because it's a variance process.
Okay.
And we want to make sure that the variance process is applied consistently across all applications. So that's the only clarification I'm trying to make.
Okay.
And I'll give you these are, they have these. These are the Licking County tax auditors' applications for the 5 contingent properties.
Okay, thank you.
So if it's 4 or 5, that's fine. I think the number is
Yes.
less important so much as the items that,
So has Ben made the motion?
I think
I
Brian
made,
did
I made the motion.
I
I
read-
made the motion.
I read the conditions.
Yes.
Is everybody okay with the conditions? Are there any changes to the
I'm good with
conditions
them.
I had read?
I'll second
Trash was the only one for me.
With the conditions?
with the conditions.
Okay.
I'll second the motion. on-
And Teresa, you have the
with
conditions?
I do.
Great. All right, we will proceed with the roll call vote.
Emily,
Yes.
Steve Dyer,
Yes.
Jesse Popple,
Yes.
Sherman Green,
Yes.
Walter Rock.
Yes.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you very much. I
So,
appreciate it.
yep, just please get those items in and you're good to go.
I have one question for you. What is the zoning board's perspective on short-term rentals?
I mean,
Do
we,
you support them? Do you not want them in your community?
oh yeah, we had a lot of debate about them. So the debate, we landed on having them in that commercial district.
Okay.
So kind of when we talked about it, it just came down to this commercial district was the place that out of any in town was probably had the most infrastructure to support, having multiple people,
Sure.
in a unit. Now, when you get out into residential, not so much the case,
So it depends with the nature, the language in the code, the nature of the community. So it may be GCC one down, that's kind of where I was going before.
Right.
Down the street, GCC one, I might view differently than,
And with us, it
GCC
was,
one.
CC1 runs from.
With us,
right, but
right.
I might see that how it fits into the character of the community differently and in the downtown commercial district than I do in South Main where it's all houses and residential, although it's still GCC one.
Right.
That same business concept may not fit the character of the communities the same in both of those. Does that make sense?
And that's why there was so much debate on this, even amongst the board and continuing through still. That's why we made it a conditional use, because it has to fit that criteria. And each property is different. I mean, you know how real estate is. Each property is different and unique in its own different way. So leaving it as a conditional use and tying it more towards a commercial district is what we felt was best, because we wanted to give an option for it. It can be nice, but on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. I think there's 2 others on Main Street.
Yes.
Yeah, Ghost Rider and the one at Bob's Electric.
Yeah,
Those are the only ones in town?
Yep.
they
That we
should
know
be.
of.
That we know of.
Well, we're
we
battling
do-
the rest of them.
we
let's
do
just put it
look,
that way.
you
The only
know,
permitted ones in town.
yeah,
Okay,
Permitted
because
ones.
that's my question, because I do want to, this was not an easy process for us.
right,
And
Oh.
and I hope that standard is held for those that don't follow this process.
yes.
And it's pretty obvious because they're advertising on these websites.
Yes.
If you went home and pulled up this night. and-
My wife goes on there
And we
every
try
month
to-
and submits
we try to
formal
police as-
complaint to
We
Jim.
try to police as we can, and staff tries to police as we can. Now, there are some that have a Johnstown address, but they're not within city
Well,
limits.
these
So-
are in.
Yeah, we do the best we can with what we have, and we've tried to provide a conduit to have this business.
But if you see any
So-
pop up, feel free to submit your written complaint to Jim. Follow up on.
What's the, from the long-term, strategic plan for the village, the city now?
Yeah.
For housing, what do you guys want?
That's gonna be the question of the hour. Definitely come to the meetings, as we have. We're gonna have, that was the question that I was gonna ask tonight.
That's a
When's our
council
next
question.
meeting on the comprehensive plan?
That's above our head.
It's gonna be somewhere in the March
They'll
timeframe.
live in
So
the city.
definitely in March.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk more about it. We're having a series of public meetings, for the public to come in and give feedback with MKSK. So definitely feel free to stop out to those and weigh in, and then,
MKSK is a company we
That's-
hired
yeah.
to develop,
Yeah.
they're developing our new comprehensive plan, which should give us a better idea of where we're headed.
yeah, we had a comprehensive plan from what, 5 years ago? Something like that. So, and as soon as Intel showed up, it made it obsolete. So there's a lot
One
of,
thing I think is important. in
what's
this-
that?
So
Yeah,
it's
it stuck around for about 6 months. It took us 2 years to get it done, and then, so it's something we're working on, and we kind of have to still identify our identity, in some cases.
How do you, if you have a property owner, I mean, to do these things is a ton of money, right?
Yeah.
As an investor, right, whether you're doing a house, or you're gonna make it multifamily, or you're gonna build something, how do you know, you don't wanna go sink that investment, only to come here and you guys like, yeah, that's not what we want. So what would be the perspective if we have plans to build, to renovate, to modify, you know, to come up with engineered drawings and those type of things, to come to you to only say, yeah, we don't like that, is very expensive. So how do you engage
It
in
is.
a conversation with you guys to say, oh, we absolutely support that, but I'm not.
You're
I'm
doing
not
the best,
incel.
you're doing the
Yeah,
best thing
I
you
mean,
can do
I
right now.
it was
You,
hand drawn, but I
Yeah.
wasn't gonna pay an architect to draw something that my wife's a designer.
yeah, you get a hold of our staff and you get a copy of our zoning code, you go through that, and that's what we're gonna enforce right now. And, in the future, it could change or be amended. They're all living documents, but, yeah, definitely weigh in on your public feedback and check with staff and check the code, and that's the best thing you can do. And when in doubt, you can always apply for a variance.
One of the bigger issues that we're faced with, going back to the Airbnbs, is they open up. We have one we've been dealing with that's not in the GCC
Right.
zoning district, and can't honestly say that it's not being used. There's no good way to police it. They've been told that it had to be shut down, but I can't honestly say. But it doesn't seem to be advertised anymore, at least what I can find. I don't know if anyone else has seen it.
I think the other thing you guys need to consider is, so I come into the GCC, I have to go through this process for an Airbnb, but I can open up a pet store, a department store, a drugstore, a grocery store, a gas station, a clothing store, a tailor, a furniture, a home appliance store. I can put any one of them up on the property that I have, right?
Yes, sir.
So I think that's, kind of balance that between what you want. If you make it difficult for people to offer, you know, short-term rentals, they can do those other things very, very simply. And
Yeah.
you might have the next Sirens upstairs at that place versus a short-term rental.
Yep.
So just a thought.
Definitely appreciate the feedback, and, best of luck on your
Thank you very
business
much.
there.
I appreciate
Yeah.
your time, and we'll look for that information. So we resubmit that. I have conditional use approval. We obviously see from the pictures, I don't have it furnished yet, but then, once we submit those things, we can proceed.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Thank
Stay
you.
in touch with our staff, and they'll point you in the right direction on the rest of the process.
Know that it's the application, not the applicant. So, and what I mean by that is,
Oh.
it's the application, it's not a reference to the applicant.
No, I understand.
Okay,
No problem at all.
Great. And then, just a curiosity question. Everybody always asks Johnstown, what's their thoughts on housing and things, and I always like to reverse the question. Where do you see, and what would you like to see as
Good
far as
question.
your
Very
ideas
good question.
for housing or the downtown district, and what, if you're gonna put us on the spot, I like to turn it around.
I think you guys are gonna need to protect the downtown, because I think that, your affordable housing options are gonna vanish. And I think that you need to recognize that, when you look at your zoning code and know that if it's multifamily, I can build whatever I want, knock down what I want. I think that the short-term, the housing, affordability is gonna be a huge issue. And I think that you need to look to ways to support those folks that are trying to do it.
Support the affordable housing?
Yes, I think you're gonna have to look to ways to find that, because I don't think that, there's gonna be much of an option for folks to be able to do that. You know, what I hope for Johnstown, I think it's protect the downtown, because I think it's truly a draw when you look at it, the other communities. You go to Bridge Park, they're trying to build what you guys already have.
Yeah.
Right? So I
It's the
think-
one thing we have,
Now, when
New Albany
you-
doesn't have.
Yes.
When you talk about affordable housing, are you talking about subsidized housing, or are you talking about,
I'm
okay,
talking
just
about you and I
market
trying to
value?
live
Yeah,
Close to where we work.
diverse housing options, more like.
Yes.
Yeah.
And,
So do you feel we have a deficiency of those, or that we're gonna need more of those, or we already have an abundance?
there's not a lot of places to rent in Johnstown. Or not
So
a
you're
lot-
talking about
not a lot
rental
of
or home ownership when it comes to affordability?
Both.
Maybe.
We're over 51% on rentals in
Yeah,
the city
we're
right
second
now.
in the county.
It would surprise you, but we are over 51% on rentals. Yeah,
I just-
We're at 56%.
yeah. I didn't know what the exact was, but the last I heard, it was like 52. So,
Second only to Newark.
yeah,
In the
yep,
city.
in the city limits. We have a
How
lot of
many
rentals.
Structures there, you know?
The Rolling Meadows has tremendous amount of
Yeah.
rental properties in it, and
Yep.
then you throw in like the Redwood development, there's 88 there, and your apartments, and then scattered throughout all Old Johnstown, probably 50% rentals.
Leafy
Some
Dome.
streets are almost all rentals.
Leafy Dell is quite a bit.
A lot of
The apartments, but the
construction
houses
side.
too. There's even rentals off of Concord. I mean, they're.
For
they're
the size of our
everywhere.
town, we have a tremendous
Yeah.
amount of complexes, is how I'll phrase them, as far as Leafy Dell.
Every closing I've done this year for Johnstown's been bought by a landlord, not a family
Yeah.
moving in. Every single one, every single one.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, definitely, we welcome your feedback
Yeah.
when we get to those MKSK meetings
crazy?
and city council. Zoning, we're gonna weigh in as much as we can, but that's gonna be a process that really plays out with city council and that whole process. So, of course, we're gonna weigh in every chance we get
The
there.
other part is, there's some of the properties that, you know, I know that you get put the screws to me because I'm the new guy coming in and asking for conditional use, but I think it's important that there's a lot of people out there that aren't complying, that aren't doing what they're asking with vacant cars and trailers and trash, and there's, why? I mean, I think it's important that you keep that enforcement up, because it helps the community and.
Helps
Yeah,
Correct.
It's a job.
Oh, I don't doubt that, so.
Every day you
Correct.
find something new.
Yep.
Every day.
And I'd say it's good to hear you talk about downtown and how much you,
That's awesome.
because this is version 2.0, because if you saw the pictures, the first version burnt down. But it's a point of pride, as you know, right, for that downtown space in terms of defining the identity and some of the architectural features that we try and bring out from an aesthetic standpoint and protecting that downtown
I
space.
talked to
But
Tim, the street sweeper, all the leaves pile up on my side of the street, so
Yeah.
I feel like a shopkeeper out there. But it is unique, and I do think from the city standpoint, you do have a gym there. And I think you're gonna, the growth is coming, and you're obviously gonna have to welcome it, but in a fashion that best suits the feel of the town.
I
So,
appreciate your cooperative, appreciate your investment in the city too, so thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the zoning inspector report.
As you can see, total new homes permitted, one. I have
Very
had
good.
as high as 10 in January before. And Ben asked me this, he wanted to know where the remaining approved building lots are. Approximately 32 in Pulte, Development Creekside Preserve, and there's 8 neo-traditionals left in Concord Crossing East. And according to the property owner, he wants to have them built out by the end of this year. That's his goal. And he hasn't permitted anything yet.
There's still plats behind Kroger, right?
That's where Creekside is.
That's great.
No, so there are plats behind Kroger,
Oh,
but
those are not gonna be built on.
from
Don't-
what,
Don't bring up
well,
my nightmare.
we,
Saying.
we hear they're not gonna, the conventional
Don't stress
wisdom
my
is they're not
life.
gonna be built on, but you never know anymore.
Well, the property owner had told me he's going to have them changed back to farm ground because he started paying taxes on them. And he says as long as he lives, they'll never be built on, so I'm just going by what he said. And he owns all
How old
of
is he?
62 frontage,
Yeah,
so.
And then-
no, I've heard the same, they used to tell me
I don't
Heimer would
have
never
my
sell
numbers
either.
at all. I haven't.
Well, then we had that development we were talking about at one point that was off of Benedict, and that whole thing fell through.
Yeah.
The gentleman who's going to do that passed away.
Okay. And then, Simonello. What's going on with Concord?
So we have the initial plat done there, and then he has to come back for the final plat, so where is he in that process?
And
Would say,
Sean just met with the Schlaybox, he can.
sure, I can try to give you as much as I can as an update. That process is currently working towards a finish line. You'll probably see that final plat coming in the near order of things. There's, I want to say, engineering is going through their review process. I believe that's coming to a close. So we should see some of that being handed in and being approved by the city engineer. So once that gets approved, the next step will be, I think, doing that final plat process. They're going to do it in 3 phases from the conversations that I've heard. And Other than that, everything's according to the preliminary plat that was approved by this board earlier in the year. And so, no new changes, no new surprises. We're working through a tree situation that got brought up at council. A little bit of,
And the secondary ingress and egress.
and then the secondary ingress and egress. Now that probably won't have to be determined prior to their start. That's gonna be a secondary item. They have committed to the $500,000 commitment. Now, whether that be, sounds like it's not gonna be Douglas, or a secondary street, that's gonna be for the city to kind of figure out. But the original commitment for them to put in a fire access that's gonna be, if memory serves me correctly, 20 to 25 feet wide, that can handle a fire truck or an ambulance or anything of that sort, will be installed as originally planned. Like I said, the only thing that's gonna require a little bit of zoning gymnastics, because of the oddity that exists with this particular development, taking such a long time from start date till end date. When did it stop? When did it start? When did the tree ordinance come online? When did it not come online? Does their permit, is it applicable to the prior or the post of this particular tree thing? So we're going to work through a process that hopefully gets us in a way that is agreeable to the city as well as the developer. Like I said, I've been given direction from council to try to work to an agreement that allows for, if there are trees removed, where those trees could be replaced and replanted to help beautify that area. So, in an effort to save us the
Kind of like
legal.
floodplain mitigation, but with trees.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's like I said, not my dream scenario for how something would proceed, but there was a lot of moving parts that all existed in the same time frame that are trying to work in unison, that sometimes they don't all line up perfectly. So, working with the developer, I think that's really the only hiccup. Provisions as far as the additional pool house, HOA being all combined in as one, those things are being worked on in the background. So, I don't anticipate anything out of the ordinary coming up that's outside of what you preliminarily approved.
So did you say they agreed to build a second road?
So they are doing an emergency access
The emergency one through the, right, yeah, I remember that one.
through this area. The city is looking at, there has been a provision of $500,000 given to the city for some type of connection, whether it be through Douglas, or they're looking at connectivity to Jersey.
So that little bike path, remember the bike path?
How do we
that
arrive
was
at
throughout
$500,000?
conversation we had?
So that was in
Now
the
they're doing
preliminary
it
plat
through
agreement.
the-
Oh, how did we arrive from
Sun
it?
Park.
Because
So
I know they were supposed to do the road, and
all the way up
originally we
there.
had talked about a park, but
how did that number come up? That's a great question. So
I like it.
I'm
the,
not a Mastodon guy.
he's gonna tell us about the $500,000.
yeah, I always forget. You guys can't see my pencil when I point it here. So it helps if I move to my visual aids, be a weatherman for a minute. Here we have a strong storefront coming in. So Commerce Boulevard, there was a discussion to connect to that. So a little bit of grace, I've got brought into this very much at the end of the conversation. So I was given more task than more thought. So I was tasked to find out what it would cost to connect here to this particular area. Took that to the engineers. The engineers came back with a number of 500,000. Actually, I think it was 400,000, but I actually planned for some inflationary and tried to boost it as much as I could. But from there to there was 500,000. That was the request of the staff at the time to the developer, so that's the number that I took and ran with. And that is the number that we ultimately ended upon. with
That's
the
just
preliminary plat.
improvement, that's not land acquisition.
Right.
So some of that was for land acquisition as
It
well.
was, okay.
So it surprisingly wasn't all that expensive. It's not a very large, I mean, you look at it, it's pretty short. And it's probably more expensive now. I probably under-guessed on the inflation. Who would have known that things were rising at such a rate? So
Is the property owner willing?
the property owner was not willing. So that is,
Yeah.
that, as well as concerns from the council and this board, of connecting a residential street into an industrial area, which I think are valid concerns.
Right.
From mixing the two uses, whether a delivery truck misses a turn and now he's, in the middle of a subdivision with kids in the streets, or, somebody walking their dog and trying to make the radiuses to get turned around, obviously could prove to be problematic. So
Truck hangs up on the bell and more like the next shift drives through that neighborhood to go home.
Yeah.
That's what's gonna happen. But when it left this board with the initial plat, we had a stub road over on the east side of that neighborhood. Now, I think this board got some bad information and went with that stub road, because at the time, I mean, it's still zoned this way. If you look at the city zoning map, but both of those properties to the north there, are both zoned, light manufacturing, I believe.
Correct.
And we were told at the time that that would turn into a light manufacturing district. And then up the yellow property line there, the city boundary, we could have had a stub road. I know there's a pond there, but going next to the pond, we could add a stub road that went all the way up to Sportsman's Club. So it seems now that that's not likely to happen. That property's not gonna develop the same way we thought.
There's been conversations from this particular property owner that they may not want to be a part of the city anymore, so, just trying to be fully transparent. So, that's gonna be their decision, whether they choose that path or a different path, I don't know. I think they were just questions that they had at the time, so maybe they're valid, maybe they're relevant, maybe they're not, so.
De-annexation's a pretty unlikely event. I've only ever seen it happen one time, but and that was a city that was rapidly rapidly losing population.
And at that conversation, if you did have a stub out road here, it's probably only gonna act as from a functionality standpoint for this, is an emergency access. I very much doubt whether someone's going to be like, let me go downtown and go this way. So there, I think, from what I understand, is the thought is to try to have some connectivity to the downtown district to create that linkage that allows for that traffic to not have to go out to 37 if it wants to go downtown, or to add more vehicular traffic on Concord. So, all just thoughts out loud. All good things. This could have been a success, maybe, and maybe this will end up being residential. Who knows? And at that point, if it is residential, that stub out's going to be a great fit to have that connectivity with that particular parcel.
So the thought is to not initially use the 500,000 to invest in Jersey or Douglas, or
I think council.
that's
this is
council.
on me.
Council hasn't given any feedback on whether
I think
they just-
council is wanting, yes, I can tell you at the last committee meeting, there is a desire for them to get some preliminary findings as to what this would cost to connect it to Jersey. So that's been their direction for me as a staff person to do. So that's what I'm gonna do with the engineers, just get some preliminaries, let them look at it. They may find that it's gonna be astronomical in cost and they wanna pull back from it. They may say this fits. I don't know. I can't
Yeah.
get inside their heads. I don't know.
From looking at it today, there's gonna be a tremendous amount of backfill or build a bridge in there.
I will do whatever they tell me to do. So,
Do you have to get permission from the bike path? I guess if you went around to get
From the
that
TJ
done,
Evans
did you guys talk about
TJ
that?
Evans Foundation has said that they're not going to allow for access to crossing.
But if we cross through on Jersey, you would be in the parking lot, so you wouldn't really cross the bike path, right? Is that right?
You would just drive through the Mastodon Preserve.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, which
Gotta
is
go
not-
around it.
which is not a great.
That's what the council
Yeah.
wants.
I see pluses and minuses to both. I don't want to take a side. I'm not going to take a side. I get the intent, whether it's a feasible plan or functional plan. I don't know.
There's so many variables.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have a drive-through Mastodon tour now.
Yes. Well, site tour.
Well,
Well, I was curious, thank you for the detailed update.
Oh, that
Yeah,
was very
appreciate it.
detailed. Sorry.
Like it.
The only other question I have with respect to Seminole and the process going through from preliminary to final plat is I assume, but I'm going to explicitly ask about Title 13 stormwater management. Is that being applied in terms of?
In the new cool Title 13 that we have to take part in, this is part of that zoning gymnastics as far as when did it start and when did it stop? Did the ball really come to a rest, or was it technically still rolling at some point on the table?
So that's being countered with that?
This one is probably, I don't know where it's gonna land. I think from an engineering standpoint, it may not be in that Title 13. Everything else after this would be. I'm giving you probably the reality, not my desire. You're as frustrated as I am. I don't know that there was any provisions in the preliminary plat that called out the requirement.
I guess the assumption was that it was,
New. I would love to get more feedback because I have not gotten much on that particular topic because I had a lot of questions inside my own head. And I don't have any background on this project. Like I said, brought in a little bit late. You got something for me afterwards? Sounds like we're gonna have an offline conversation.
that's a very important part of zoning, especially for those types of developments,
What has it been?
especially in
The
that
drainage?
particular part of the
Oh.
city.
You mean with all of the water?
When will we know whether or not it's applicable?
It hasn't been brought to my attention until just now, but I've wondered about it in my own head. So, like I said, I'm taking a project that started prior to my involvement.
Right.
What was the
So
issue?
this was never mentioned
It's
to me.
stormwater
Prior
management.
to any of our involvement.
Because there's like a
Most of us
creek that
being
flows
in the
right
city.
across that.
I mean, this started in
Almost.
what,
I've
like
walked
late
back there.
90s?
I've walked back there.
This project
So
did,
muddy.
but-
It's always
This
so
started
muddy.
in
There's actually-
89.
There's actually a
When he
creek
bought
that
the
ends into that
property,
field.
Oh my
and
God.
then started the
supposed to-
process.
There's
I mean,
cattails grow back there.
developed the partnerships and all.
We talk about
that.
Title 13 to where there's a bill put on the
I've got.
Is it
water
the-
bill that,
If you want
that
some
allows you
history,
to
show
This
us.
is
assess.
MS guidelines.
It's almost pretty
Um,
good.
I know exactly. I had the exact same questions.
It's mainly 1197, 1199. I mean, the 1197, comprehensive stormwater management. Everything to do with permeability of the soil, everything to do with natural flow of the water. You know, it's a big part of the sediment control for the stormwater basins and things like that upstream. It's a big reason why we invested plus $50,000 into Concord over here with retaking that basin. It's only half done at this point. It's a big reason why we pushed.
Something I
this whole
can
head
tell
push
you,
To send out letters to have ponds dredged and things like that.
maybe this will alleviate some of your concerns. So, and I'll double check this, but from some conversations I've had with our engineers about the requirements. So the requirements that they've been going by are the same requirements that are in this Title 13. The difference that hasn't come on board yet is the financial piece. So as far as things being done to EPA regulations to meet all the guidelines for stormwater management retention, from what I've been told, engineering is putting in place all those guidelines that would be there. That's the standard in which they use currently. The difference is the assessment. That's the piece that doesn't exist, and that's just fun conversations. You may find in other municipalities that whenever you get your water and sewer bill, there's actually water, sewer, storm sewer. So currently, when you're in Johnstown, you get water, sewer, that's it. Any new development, now that we're a city, we are now have a mechanism in place to where we can start to bill for that stormwater system that is a part of the infrastructure that exists in that area. And it's not a huge amount every month, but what it does is it allows the city to make sure that we can maintain and properly manage the stormwater that exists as far as catch basins, retention ponds, things of that nature, that usually are borne by the HOA, which would still be on the HOA, but a lot of the underground infrastructure that exists inside the right-of-ways, we now have some funding mechanism to repair those and make sure that they're working order. So that is something that more than likely you'll see moving forward as a city. We'll have that little extra tab at the bottom of it.
You weren't on my board when that preliminary plat came up.
I think he
were you?
was.
Were you? Yeah.
Yeah, he was on there.
That's why the stormwater piece is just, especially for that area, so big, just because of the investment, number one, that the city's already put in, and knowing the flow of stormwater in that area.
Well, it's gonna change too, because Concord Crossing, they're saying that their basin is not adequate anymore, right?
So the old one,
The OG crossing over there,
this guy right here, is this the one you're
Yeah.
referencing?
they're
Like,
saying
the
that
cursor.
that's not adequate
There we
anymore.
go. So no, it's not that it's not adequate, it's that there has been information that would probably lead one to believe, now, we have to get engineers to go in there, we haven't been able to find the old documents that show the engineering that was done originally. If we can, that would be awesome. I think we haven't given up that battle yet, but at some point we may have to, but there is a flow inlet here, or outlet, whatever you want, outlet there. Upon some type of just visual evaluation, it would appear that maybe there should be a reducer that would restrict the flow of this outlet pipe, because currently water comes in and goes out at a pretty aggressive rate, and you will never see any retention of the water, or detention, I should say.
Shouldn't it baffle? Shouldn't there be?
There should be, and so the visual inspection showed a potential plate where rivets and things used to be, may not exist anymore. Now, it would be easy just to say, well, let's put up another plate, but then you have to figure out the correct sizing of that plate that needs to be on there. Size it too small without a overflow device, and you have more water backing up than you desire. If you size it too big, you're allowing the water to release at a rate that is not consistent with the
Right.
rate that it was being released at prior to the development. And that is the ultimate goal with any development, is to retain or detain the water so that it releases at a rate that is consistent with its current status as it sits, whether it be farmland, whether it just be an open pasture, a field, whatever it is. So that's the whole purpose of that retention and detention pond. So
Well, didn't TAC re-engineer that? They're the ones that did the work.
who is that?
TAC.
Or, I'm not sure.
Well, those are the ones who did the work. I'll tell you
Okay.
that right now.
TLV?
TLV,
Okay.
sorry.
You're good.
TLV is the one who did the work, 100%.
Okay.
And, yeah, I believe they
So
pretty much re-engineered that space within the city scope. And we talked about baffling, especially that outlet that goes under Concord, because of how it affects everybody else downstream.
Oh, for sure.
Going right down Caswell, and making sure that the outlet of the water was appropriate,
Absolutely.
and not overbearing. And that was one of the biggest reasons why, not only the health hazard of the cattails and all the junk that was growing in that space, but to make sure that there's mitigation for the outflow going underneath Concord. So the fact that there isn't a baffle there,
That's upon a visual inspection by your service director.
I might check on the warranty work that TLV did, to see how long that is. It might be out of compliance, but if there's one to check about originality and what they did, they're the ones that are gonna have that paperwork.
I'll tell you what, those lines are off by a good 10 feet. Look at that fence, Jim.
Yeah.
So
Jim and I know-
hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
Jim and I know that fence is on the property line. Yeah, those lines are off a good 10 feet.
Never go by the auditor's map.
Oh, I know. Well, that's why I'm saying Jim and I found the pins over there on that one
Oh, yeah.
property, and that fence is directly on the pins.
We always get calls, once a year, referencing how something is in violation.
I spent-
You can't go off the auditor's visual map, find the pins.
I spent about 4 hours finding those pins, so I know where they're at.
But Jim, also in your report, you had signs, you said there were two signs that were out of compliance, one of which is Family Restaurant that's under renovation right now.
Right.
But is the other one where Goodies used to be, up there across?
That sign now is finished off. The other two businesses have added their signs to the, that structure is actually in compliance. And then it was put up, it's in compliance, it's 13 feet tall.
Is the brightness in compliance?
The what?
The brightness of the sign,
Oh, I have no way to determine that.
okay.
I had this same question. I I believe there was a variance given for that particular sign. If I remember
The
correctly.
brightness of the sign?
Not for the brightness, but for the
sign itself.
I was gonna say,
the post,
I don't know how we would hear a variance on
The
brightness.
variance was because the sign was not in close proximity to the base, which then allowed it to be more of a pole or post sign rather than a monument sign.
Yeah.
And I do remember there was a variance given for that. I do remember it because I voted against it.
And it's so you can see.
You voted against it?
I did.
Well, I wasn't on the board at that time.
It's so you can see underneath the sign to get out on the 62. That's why you could not have a typical monument sign there.
It is not the business, or it is not the city's job to accommodate a property so
Oh, you have
that
setbacks.
it's financially feasible for the investor.
So moving down this list here, Redwood, is that ever gonna come back?
I had to call about it
Lord
today.
only knows.
Okay. Just saying, cause
They have not called me.
They
That
are-
is how I'll respond.
they are tabled. They are still tabled,
We can
technically.
technically take them off.
Well, I'm just saying they're
If you
still
do want to
tabled.
remove it from the table,
I'm gonna say they're
me
still
know.
tabled and
because as
to
a
notify 'em.
legal courtesy and housekeeping item,
Right.
they need to be notified if you plan to remove it from the table.
that's what I'm saying.
If you have a desire, let me know. I will notify them, and so they can be made aware, and then.
What's the current conversation?
I'm glad Jim, well, I was just saying, cause
Should we take them off the
wasn't-
table, you think?
wasn't on here still as tabled, but we all know it.
I usually do.
We all know it. You're fine.
Yeah, I think Teresa and I missed it, so.
Yeah.
I've been putting it on the past ones, I forgot.
Have they said anything?
As long as, we all know it, so it's not a
Don't
big
like
deal,
me.
but if they don't come back for
No,
2
we don't.
years and we're not here anymore.
Not with a statement of,
Continue
it's
to
not the
list it.
city's responsibility to make sure the investor makes maximum money.
And then the Leafy Dell,
Theme I run through, and then they don't like it.
so Leafy Dell Apartments has gone through, we've resolved the water meter issue, how did that shake out?
Yeah, that's resolved and been made part of the permanent record for their zoning certificate.
Where did we go with on that?
They are going to run one main line in, and
I don't know
then,
what's your guys' thoughts on that tabling.
spider it off into separate doors
They
into
should, yeah, they
a,
shouldn't be like indefinitely tabled.
some type of
So
housing.
it's
That's
a
bad.
old system.
Turn it off.
So it'll be, they've got to figure
So
it
each
out.
one will have
Different
meters?
house. Each unit will have a meter.
Okay.
And we will have access to that space so that we can do the according shut-offs if necessary.
Is there any appetite down there to take them off the table?
Redwood.
Just
No,
a clean house?
I think we leave them on. There's no reason to do anything with them now, but if they're still on at the end of the year, I will probably say it's time to do something then.
Walter?
Ryan, Ace Hardware, I'll be taking that off, it's fully permitted.
I was gonna say it's fully permitted and they found a builder, I heard, so
Yeah, they did.
This is just me.
they're gonna start building
They
that.
actually have submitted their plans
go.
to the county,
Okay.
and they wouldn't approve them until I issued the zoning certificate, which I did yesterday.
Okay. It's almost, the other thing I was gonna say for your inspection report, it's almost that time for mowing again.
Yeah?
I'm greasing up the gears as we speak, so got the mower in the shop. We'll be mowing
Pharmacy.
soon.
Actually, I seen
Pharmacy now.
some grass today, it looked like it was pretty.
All right, so moving on, anything else for Jim? Any other questions? So moving on to other business. We've talked a lot of other business already, which is great.
Actually, I did have one more for Jim.
Okay.
I'm just curious, since it's come up tonight, on enforcement of the other, have we had any specific Airbnbs that have popped up that we've done enforcement on?
Only the one on Jersey, which is just off of, South Main, second house.
Are they still listed on there, do we know?
No, I haven't been able to find it. Anytime you guys wanna look and see if you can find it, and Ryan mentioned it earlier, you'll see some that says Johnstown.
Yeah.
I went as far as tried to reserve one, cause I couldn't get any information.
Sting operation.
Well, they actually have a picture of the building, and I know the building
your
is
sleeping
not in
bags.
Johnstown, so.
Take Steve, lock that Sting operation down.
Do it.
All
You
right.
guys do have an interest in helping to control that practice. We don't have none of us are good at looking up that stuff, so.
We are
if you
gonna
want
have-
to, Like, it could be helpful.
Post on Facebook later, looking
Send a
for,
message
looking
to-
for Airbnb accommodations for this weekend.
We are going to be faced with another one that we're working on, conditional use permit, plus we're not sure what, or there's other things. It's really complicated, so.
All right, so moving on to other business. Does anybody have any other business? As far as things coming down the pipe, zoning wise, I know we're gonna continue with our zoning overhaul. What's the next thing we could see in front of us and when?
I don't know. I'll ask for a clarification. You say zoning overhaul, what do you, can you give me more background on that?
So going through, just as we've been going through the book, through the
Yeah.
code, we went through GCC 1, we looked at
Okay.
GCC 2, and
I
just
got you.
right on down the line.
Okay.
I know we talked about.
Thought I had
No,
a
no, no.
task
No,
list
no, no.
somewhere that I didn't know
I'm
about.
saying as we've gone through here, our normal enforcement, review and stuff, but, I know we talked about signage coming up this year. I know we talked about, an economic district of some sort. We have talked about light manufacturing. We have talked about a couple different, classifications being overhauled.
So I'll just be as transparent as I can. Whenever you see a document as far as some amendment being put forth before the board, it's usually for us, it's usually because there's a heavy deficiency in that particular area that the city is somewhat vulnerable in. That's where I've been trying to focus the attention, being that we're vulnerable in some of the other areas that you saw come before the board. At this point, there's a general vulnerability throughout with probably all of our code because it needs to be reevaluated or reworked.
Right.
I guess I look at infill parcels. Those are probably the most vulnerable. And I look at what zoning exists in areas that don't have any development on them, and is the current zoning consistent with probably where we want to be at? And if it's not, then that's when I kind of bring it before the board. Other than that, I haven't really said, okay, we're going to go through SR1 this week,
Right.
or UR2, or whatever the case may be, just to go through the exercise. It's usually with an intended purpose that we're vulnerable in that area. So as far as signage goes,
I know that's one. I think Ben would agree with me.
so
Signage is one that probably needs brought up.
Signage and parking.
Yeah, because we amended some signage and then that didn't carry through. So we should probably go back through and look at that at least.
so
And I know Yaz said that he has some pre-approved documentation on that we might be able just to review pretty quickly and really make it something that we can work with.
I'll defer to Teresa on this. I was under the impression that this board and council just passed a new sign code within the last 7 months. Is that consistent?
I believe so, but how long has that been?
I don't know.
I have to look.
We added some pictures to the existing sign.
I think we clarified some of what we had.
Yeah, that's.
It's been within the last 12 months. I think it was early.
We
last-
went through and
I think
we
Bailey was,
went through and made changes, but it didn't pass
Never hit
through.
Correct.
Council.
We made some changes, but they didn't pass through.
It was spotty.
Yeah, so I think that, and according to our legal counsel, there are some other changes to maybe bring us
there's some
more up to date.
constitutionality ones that probably
Right.
need to be addressed. So where I was gonna go with signing, I didn't know, if memory serves me correctly, I could be wrong, because a lot's coming at me. I remember council passing some sign code, or this board passing some sign code. Teresa's desperately
I know.
trying to look.
Take your time. I mean,
Within the last, I
yeah.
want to say 6 months, so I didn't know that there was a overhaul of signage to be done. I was having the legal department look at anything that was not crystal clear from a constitutionality standpoint and revisiting that, but not a complete reevaluation of the signage with the fact that it had just been done. If that is some desire, I can tell you my preference, I'm gonna get in trouble tonight. My preference is to have a planning firm write the code, and then you all look at it, rather than us try to go through the exhaustive exercise of us trying to do what we interpret to be best when we don't have
Well,
the
right.
full background. And then also with the planning firm, also collaboration with the legal department, and then having a nice finalized document that's presented to you all so that it's a review process rather than a creation process. I'm gonna get in trouble for saying all that.
That's all right. We're here to talk things out and break barriers. I don't mind it.
Okay.
I don't mind it.
So
Public
that's-
public discourse. That's what we're here for.
So that's where I was at. If
That's where we're 10 years.
council directs me in a different
Uh-huh.
manner, then I can do that.
That's
If you have a desire to do it differently and you want to take that to council, I'll go for it. I
what
can
didn't
I
happen
can
10 years
transmit your
ago.
message to
You know that.
council. What's that?
You know that, it's 10 years ago. It's with the document that has been gone through 4 times
Yeah.
at this point and has gotten us to this point. And the signage piece was even, that wasn't even in it. That was something that, I'm gonna forget who we.
Well, our last signage piece was probably created by a design firm.
The signage that was just updated was Kim Littleton.
Yeah.
Yes, the images.
Yeah, and some of the verbiage.
That's what was that.
And that's
We
why
added the
it was-
images and
It was
stuff.
updated, but it was just, this piece was plugged in here.
Yeah,
This piece
yeah.
was plugged in here. Whereas the document that was reviewed over the last 2 years was in totality. And so there are absolutely gaps because the intention was not.
It sounds
plug
as
it.
though
It was, so, yes.
This is where also I'll go with this. Like I said, I'm gonna get in trouble tonight.
do it. Let's go.
I do not have the time to work through a signage code that took place prior. If this is gonna be a 3-hour meeting every Tuesday, I can flat tell you, I will probably not be able to be present. If we have an application, I will be here, and like I said, I'm gonna get in trouble with council. I've gotta pick my battles, and I'm running short and tight on staff. So that's why I look at the most vulnerable areas that we are from a village standpoint. I'm not saying signage is not, but from a development standpoint of where we're at and where the greatest threat exists, I've got to be able to put my energies towards those. And if I'm here for 3 hours or 2 hours a night, and then not only that,
On Valentine's Day?
well, I don't mind the Valentine's Day thing. My wife and I are way past that. But it's not only that, then it's going back
You are
and
getting
doing what
yourself in
Bailey
trouble.
did,
Now you're in trouble.
drafting all of this stuff throughout the week and then bringing it back.
Right.
That's where I don't have the resources or the time to do that. If we were to get a planning company involved where they were able to do the day-to-day work on it, I would be, much more agreeable. But I'm not trying
I
to build an
think we-
expectation that I can't meet.
I think we have a solid
Are we
group
gonna have
here,
a
though.
planning, is there anybody on the horizon? Are we planning on hiring staff that brings up to that point, or to replace Bailey, or is that not?
It would not be from a full-time standpoint.
Okay.
The budget only accounts for a part-time person, and by part-time, I mean 8 hours a week. And that 8 hours a week, as we start to go through more and more of these exercises, I'll give you an example with the, I don't know what the heck it's called, Concord East, I want to say Joe Seminella, Schlable, whatever you want to call it, development. There's going to be a plan review process to make sure it's in compliance. I need that planner that's here for that 8 hours to be dedicated to see if the setbacks are met, to see if the street tree requirements are all in place and all that good jazzy stuff. So those are plan reviews that have to take place. So I would like to have a planner on board, but at this point, the budget only accounts for 8 hours a week. Now, if they have a little extra, awesome. But I can't guarantee that. So would I love to have a full-time planner? You betcha. Does the current budget have it allocated for it? Absolutely not.
I think what
You've got 5 part-timers here.
Your proposal is, I think it's valid. It's something that has been discussed previously. I mean, stuff like that has been outsourced. I think the key is that if it's outsourced and it's something is rewritten And this is taken into account, and what we previously discussed over the last several years is taken into account and put into a total document. The key is actioning it quickly and updating it quickly, or else you get to the point where it's just plug in here, and then it's piecemeal, and then the intent of what you're trying to do is lost because it's diluted. So I think some of that has happened within this, but with some of these ordinances that are within the zoning code are 30 years old or 40
Yeah.
years old.
Yeah,
And it's just, the compliance piece makes it difficult when the wording, at the very least, I think some of the legalese needs to be updated to make it more clear. You don't necessarily need to add words, but I think there's a bringing up to the times that
Yeah.
a previous document did to a certain extent. But it's just trying to marry it all up. So I don't disagree. If it needs to be outsourced and rewritten and not done over, 5-hour meetings, then I think that the onus is then just to ensure its adoptability within a time frame that is appropriate.
I think with any zoning, it needs to have guiding principles and a mission behind it.
Yeah.
And that it's overreaching throughout the entire document, because what I've seen is we'll do a sign thing that exists for one group, but then another group comes along and they have great ideas as well, and they want to see that married in, and then another group will come in, and this isn't just with signage, but this is with other things. And until you know where you want to be at, until there's a consistency of messaging that is brought forth from the council to say, this is what we want to look like when we're all grown up, you can't write a code to get there if you don't know where there is. The council needs to decide what they want to look like when they're all grown up. And once we get that, then you can backfill your zoning. If you're just trying to limp along in a measurable way that you feel like is going in maybe the right direction, at every pass and new person that comes on, you're gonna have a change in that document. We've got to get some guiding principles. That's what I'm hopeful that this comprehensive plan will identify where we want to be at. It's going to be a multi-level layered. You're going to have the first part of it, and then you're going to start to really get in more of the details. So from a procedural, I think you got to know where you want to get, and then you can backfill all your zoning as your map to get there. So
It's great to say that, but you end up 2 years down the road and $200,000 in the hole.
So I have a more.
And then you end up
more-
tearing it up for another 2 years like has happened in the past.
The local changes have necessitated a holistic 30,000-foot review of everything.
Oh, yeah.
And the comprehensive plan that was started 4 years ago, that was passed, 8 months ago, is, or longer, it's just,
And it didn't identify the annexed areas. I mean, the comprehensive plan was great at that snapshot in time, but it didn't take into account the thousands of acres that are contiguous to Johnstown, from the north, the south, the east, the west. I mean,
Right.
the 400-acre tract that's going to be annexed, or may be annexed, or not be annexed.
and that's why your point is valid. With this new comprehensive plan, what we reviewed with the previous document for zoning was in conjunction with the comprehensive plan that's now in place. So the comprehensive plan is then changing, then the zoning approach needs to change as well. So yes, you're right. You start with the comprehensive plan and then you move on to zoning.
We've officially bored you.
Oh, come on.
All right.
We're going to see who
We
came
met the goal.
first.
We met the goal. Let's get out of here.
And we won.
Thank you again.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I don't know. I think for me,
Good.
we know we're.
You ready to go to trees?
I'm all in on the comprehensive plan, and yeah, we're gonna have to change some things at the end, but we're gonna get requests on us in the next year that we may not be ready for, and I want to make sure that we're at least ready for those, because like Ben said, we're dealing with 40-year-old zoning code in some cases, and that's not gonna be. There are things that we're gonna get asked about this year that we may not be ready for.
No.
There are sign issues that we have currently that our legal team is not liking our current code.
Teresa has a question, then I have a question.
Back to, I'm looking at the ordinance that was passed in July of 2022. It was
Yeah.
amending 1177 signs, and there were quite some extensive changes.
Has Yaz reviewed that? That's another question.
He didn't review that.
Because if he didn't go through that, then what he's telling me is not true. Because he was looking at our signage and saying,
He probably
He's
didn't go
saying
through,
that-
he
yeah.
probably did the Louis Main thing where he didn't go through the right, pull the right.
so that's another question of enforceability. Because if we have,
That would be the truth, because, I mean, if,
I don't think anybody asked Yaz to look for the legalities of it.
no, but he does see our packets.
He does, but I don't know that he goes through the zoning,
Unless he's asked.
yeah, unless he's asked.
well, maybe
by
maybe
staff.
that's the first question. Then is have,
Staff would have needed to ask him to go through it to make sure.
Most of those changes.
I
thought he did go through signs.
Cosmetic.
I thought he did go through signs. It had like 22 suggestions or something.
They're all, from my understanding, they were all in there.
Yeah, I remember an email.
yeah. So all right, maybe first thing is let's get on the same page with our legal team.
All right, and then the other question that I had to your statement, Ryan. So you feel that there's going to be applicants coming in. Can you specifically give me some areas that you feel that those applicants are going to be coming in at, so that I can
You know, we're gonna
Figure
get
out.
commercial, we're gonna get residential.
on infill lots or annexed?
Oh, you know, it's all gonna come in everywhere. Mostly annexation, probably, because there's not much to infill.
So I would say the annexation will be treated entirely different from your current code. So in none of your SR1, UR1, SR2, none of that is going to be applicable to any annexed area. I would say you're never going to have another GCC1, a GCC2 district
Right.
that exists, except for what it exists now. And I would say don't, because those are 30-year-old codes, like Ben said. You don't want to emulate that.
So if we're gonna create new, then are we gonna create new, or are we gonna wait for? Are we going to create new and have the whole process hash out as they annex, or are we gonna create new and be ready for when they annex? When
That
people come to
is-
annex it.
So a lot of what you're going to see is going to be through a PUD document.
Right.
So currently, MKSK and our legal counsel is looking through, and we'll probably have something for you all to review in the very near future.
Okay.
And it will be a PUD document. Our current PUD documentation only represents residential. A new all-encompassing one is going to represent all the various pieces. So that is something that you will see probably within the next month or two. So that's why I'm glad I asked that question, because I wanted to know. And it's good whenever staff is actually a little bit ahead. So what we have been working on in the background is this PUD document. That, like I said, MKSK is working through, our legal team, Frost Brown Todd, is working through. Thad, you all met him for one of the meetings. He's kind of the zoning guru. He's pulling documents from Dublin for a point of reference, a little bit from New Albany for a point of reference. And so that is,
So that's something that we're gonna see that's already in the works then.
I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, yep. So it'll start to matriculate down. I don't want to give you the pieces of the sausage and expect for you to compile them together. I want to have the sausage made and then have something that's at least presentable to you all
Right.
to kind of look at. So, yeah. So that will probably be moving forward what we see. So
I would say-
great. I'm glad we talked.
Okay, so I'd say that signage, there were a couple other things I wanted to look at. Obviously, we have an issue with our GCC one area. I think we're gonna see this come out a little bit more to come, but it's definitely 2 to 3 kind of mixed areas together. Obviously, you have your downtown commercial, and then you have your residential.
So
And we're gonna
If we
get-
could pause there for a second, I did have a specific question about this and a specific idea that I don't know if I just want to get your guys' feedback logistically. What if we just took the downtown, commercial downtown district and separated that out from the rest of GCC one?
So I'll get into the legalese of it. Technically, it's all a commercial district because it's zoned.
It is.
Right.
I think I know what you mean, though. You're
But-
referencing the older part.
You could change, yeah, like just the old buildings downtown, that one block, both sides of it. And then going forward, you could change rules to that, which wouldn't affect, because you already have grandfathered rights, and we've come up across that, like you can't change the current rights of the the residential part,
This
but
is what we wanted to achieve with residential office,
I
was
know.
that transition zoning between heavily used commercial into a downtown space between GCC 1 and GCC 2 while maintaining the aesthetics of that residential corridor. So you have situations where, you know, you have a home.
Yeah, that's what we're,
Which,
that's what, we know we wanted to do, but it didn't happen. But here, we're here now.
do you think it would be useful going forward to have that, to have those separate
Separation.
zoning districts?
You can't, well, let me clarify and figure out what you're asking, Jesse. You're wanting to know if you can take part of the GCC one area
Yeah.
and rezone it.
Not rezone it.
No.
Just have a different, just change.
Like an overlay?
Just
Have a different name for it. So you could give it all the same rules, just say GCC 1, 2. And then over time, maybe those rules to GCC 1, 2 are adapted toward that particular GCC 2.
You'd have a GCC
Might be different. So you
You have a
wouldn't immediately.
GCC one and a GCC two?
Well, we already have a GCC
Call it
too, but-
GCC, just for visualization. Call it GCC 1A and GCC 1B. And initially, you don't change any of the rules. There's all the same rules as GCC 1A and GCC 1B. Over time, as you develop your plan and because there are distinctly different characteristics of those two sectors of GCC 1, right? Then over time, you could grandfather in different things, have different rules that apply to different ones as you go forward. Like, just the Airbnb is a perfect example of, I'm setting precedent in GCC 1 that technically is generally applicable through both parts of it, but I don't see it as, in my mind, if I had those two separately, just same rules on paper, but if they were two different ones, I could make that distinction. And that's just one like example that's come to mind and what made me think of it this week. Does that
So,
make sense?
to answer your question from a legal perspective, and I can double check this, but you would not be able to rename a district, GCC A and GCC B, because you're changing the name of it. It would have to all remain the same name. If you wanted to say it's all GCC A, you could.
You can rezone it if you don't change any of the rights, from my understanding, which if you kept the same code.
You were giving yourself the ability to change the rights by delineating.
But you're
They'd be grandfathered
No.
in. They'd be
I'm
grandfathered in,
just
but when
protecting
it
myself
changes
from-
hands down
I'm
the
not
line.
keeping the same rights, I'm just protecting myself from precedent crossing over. Does that make sense?
I don't think you can do that.
so what you can do
You're
that
saying you don't think I can change the name but
and have two different names. You could change the name as
long as you don't change the rights, you can change the name.
You can't change
I'm
it into
positive
two
about
different
that.
districts.
I'm positive about that. You can change the name, you just can't change the rights,
Then why change the name?
because you can protect yourself through precedent.
You're categorizing it as
Right.
different.
For president,
You're
saying-
categorizing an area.
You could change the name, you
Because
just
the
can't
rights are
split it
given by
into two different
code.
districts.
Precedence is not a right. Precedent is the decision-making of how the code's
So you're
applied.
talking about subjectivity to,
Yes, through your decision-making.
How we were,
Right, you can't change the code, does that?
You can do an overlay district. I'll just interject.
that's what I was gonna
You're not
say.
understanding
We
what
had,
I'm
I
saying.
get where you want to be, Jesse.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
yeah.
You can do an overlay district,
The reason
which
there
has
is
different
GCC
zoning applications.
Is because.
In the same
when they
zoning
created
Right.
GCC two, it's because,
Now, if you own
Building
property
out
in there,
62.
you're grandfathered in. But when you sell that property, the next guy
So
is
they
not.
said GCC one.
That I
will
would have to
keep it
check
just
on.
like it
It's,
did.
that's how it works, yeah.
And GCC two will allow.
Cause I run into
bigger
that.
lots, more
with sales
parking.
here and there.
So what you're saying.
You gotta
is
look at what
already
you
technically
gotta look at what the
done.
current.
And let me
zoning
give
is.
you a better example. Let me give you guys a better example,
Cause some
okay?
guy will get that.
So
he'll-
if we want to,
he'll
if
one
we had
out,
GCC
and then he'll sell it,
1A
then the next
and we
guy
had
can't.
GCC 1B, okay? Say in the future, we want to say, hey, GCC 1A, we're going to allow you to have gas stations and whatever, on business that's not currently allowed, you could add to the current rights of one portion of it, but not, without adding it to the current rights of the second portion of it. You can't take away a right that's currently there, but you can add to one of the other categories, or one of the permissible uses, for example. You can add a permissible use to GCC 1A without adding it that permissible use of GC's 1B. Is that a better example, more clear?
No, because it sounds like two separate districts.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You are having two separate districts, and you can make two separate districts. As long as you don't take away a legal or change a legal right, you can change a name, or you're still disagreeing with that.
Permissibility
basic
and
premise.
impermissibility would be that legal right, though.
But you can add, you just can't take away a right of a current zoning district, right? You understand what I'm saying? Like, you can add a right to use, so I'm saying I could add permissible uses.
Yeah, we've
to
done
one.
that. We've added.
You can't take away a right
Yeah.
by changing the zoning district of it, but you can add,
You can amend and take away a use that exists in that district. It just has to be district-wide.
Right.
But I'm saying if you created a separate district, and that during the separation, you can't take away a right or change a right during the separation. That's what I'm saying. Once you've separated it, then you guys are agreeing with me, then you can add and take away rights after they're separated, right? So if you separated it, then you could develop it differently.
As a different zoning district.
I will tell you that in an effort not to bury you all with this is a great legal question that there are awesome zoning attorneys that I can try to get to where you want to be and ask them this. I just know that there's a cost associated with it.
Right.
The overlay district is doable, and there's a cost associated with putting the overlay district in place. What I can tell you to achieve where you're at, Jesse, and I think I know where you're going, and that is to not allow that these residential structures be transformed into some type of
We have a house now. We don't want it to become multifamily or a business or
I'm not really
something odd,
focused
you
on the
know?
residential, actually. Maybe you're misunderstanding. My focus is on the downtown, preserving the downtown historic nature of the
Yeah,
downtown
we want to
historic
preserve
district.
the
What do
looks
you
of the
What
houses.
do you
and
want to
stuff.
see happen down there? And maybe I can tell you how to get there specifically. Like, what are some goals that you want to see happen in the downtown area, and then I can hopefully try to get you there.
So with the houses that we
So-
have,
Preserving some of the historic nature of the structures, I guess, is like, okay,
Okay,
do
so
we have, like, I felt like some of the decisions that we've made, like didn't have, some of the characteristics, even the brickwork, is just a simple example, has been sort of gone by the wayside, that looked cool and been painted over. And we don't
okay.
have
I'm
sort
picking
of,
up what you're putting down.
we don't have sort of the,
What's the COA?
You mean a design standards? Yes. We don't have architectural standards, and we don't have districts established.
Historical preservation, though, is covered under the COA.
And then it's up to the design review board to enforce those.
Sure.
but that's on like new builds, right? Those are existing
that's on.
structures.
That's well.
That's old
It's only
builds.
been enforced on new builds because you have all kinds of people that have painted and changed the faces of the downtown buildings, and nothing's ever happened. to
Because
it.
the interpretation of that has been
Right.
it's been a positive addition.
Yeah.
And the historical preservation has been more so with architectural features
Right.
than the color of brick. As
So
in
whether you need a
arches and-
COA is a staff determination, whether they just determine that that's a positive.
The board does. Whoever's interpreting the application for the COA goes through a set of standards like we just did with
But
the,
if someone decides they want to paint their structure, do they need a COA?
yeah.
Yeah.
They should.
Did you get a
They should.
COA?
You've got
Did you get a
major-
COA when you painted?
There are major and minor improvements, and the major
Well, I'm just, so
improvements
that's,
require a
okay,
COA.
so you're right. Like,
We don't have a great document that exists for when it comes to our design review standards. I've stated that till I'm red in the face.
Well, it's-
Everybody's tired of hearing it.
Okay, well, I take it back. That's.
No, you're
I
right.
wanted you guys to think through it with me because
Yeah.
it was a process thing. It wasn't a zoning district thing. It was just a process.
So
design process,
painting
right?
is considered, if you look at the code, painting is considered a minor.
Minor.
Right.
Doesn't say the entire building painted or whether you're painting a window seal. It just says painting. So this is where our code is deficient. It needs to spell out specifically, if painting is a major, it has to go before the review board. If it's minor,
4 years ago.
then it's,
The
I
city
won't even,
manager.
city manager, which is,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah, we don't need you looking at every
siding and,
job.
and
Yeah, we don't
and
need you
roof
looking at that.
like templates. No, but anyhow, so we go back to the document that exists for your design standards is not where it needs to be. To Jesse's point, if you're concerned, this is what I need to hear feedback. If you're concerned about the historical preservation of the architectural features or the design, then that is a design review document, which you and I are singing from the same hymnal.
That's where I'm going.
I wanna
with
get
this.
a
Something about my
document.
house or this, the residential, I'm not worried about. That'll take.
Take that down
that'll
to
take a
design
lot of
review,
time.
and I'm sure they'd love to.
I think, but I think this guy.
So
Write that up.
I just
I'll
want
argue
to
that I will not take it.
preserve that.
Oh, God, so trouble. I won't take it to design review because they're not qualified to do it. I'll just say it. They're super awesome people, but to draft a design review document that's architecturally feasible, it needs to be done by a qualified professional. And that is not a diss towards that board. That board is made up of wonderful individuals that have great input. But to have them go through a 90-page document or a 50-page document and draft it and create it is not fair to them, and it's not doing a service to the city. We need an architectural company that does this from a professional standpoint to hit the mark that you're aiming for. You let them know the mark, they're gonna get you there. So
Well, if
that's-
we're
that's where I'm
talking
gonna get in
about
trouble again
concerns,
tonight. Man, I'm gonna get fired.
one of my concerns, and that's why I liked residential office so much, is it because it created that transition corridor between commercial and residential, especially in some of these areas that's residential, because some of these that are GCC one, that are grandfathered in because there are homes there, you go in, you tear it down, and you put up commercial structure.
All right, you can buy 3 houses and you got an apartment complex tomorrow.
And so if we're talking about
Yeah.
concern, and we're talking about identity of the city as it relates to architectural features in specific corridors, then my concern is in previously defined residential office corridor,
Yep.
and maintaining some of that as it relates to what's zoned commercial right now. That's where some of my concern lies. So I'll just put that out there.
Anyways, as we grow here, we're gonna get some of these oddball requests like this, and I just wanna make sure we're ready.
Sure.
You let me know your fears, and Jesse, you were spot on. You let me know what you're concerned about, and I will try to put that on the front burner. If it's specific like that, that's helpful. That's super, super helpful. So what I can tell you is that MKSK is drafting, or will be drafting, some type of document that helps support what you're looking for.
Okay, cool.
So now, the problem is, there's a delay in order to get there. No document is created immediately. They're doing landscape design review procedures as well that are gonna incorporate the exterior aesthetics of the building that go into the streetscape of it, basically. That's gonna be your trees.
This is the
your
PUD.
mounting.
that you're
This
talking
is
about.
the landscape architectural will be probably universal.
Yeah.
As well as the design, architectural standpoint from a building. That will be a universal theme as well. So, yeah, let me know and I'll try to answer them. It's a very complicated area to be in. I couldn't do it.
So let me one more little clarification. So this goes back to where I'm just the gap, like if I made a change or addition to my house, we would have 2 design districts between historical downtown and my house. Like this couldn't fall under the same. My
Depends on
mind,
the change to your house.
Well,
they wouldn't. How could those have the same like architectural guidance? Maybe is it, like I just don't see that. It seems like this had to be 2 separate set of rules to make sense and to get to accomplish the goals that you would think preservation wise that you'd want. Does that make sense?
I will show you the document that got adopted by council.
All right, so you're already one step. They already have it, and that's.
Well,
I'm still learning as I go, even after 4
That's an
years of this.
overarching theme for us. That page that just came up. That's an overarching theme right there for us.
I disagree.
Something didn't work for some reason.
It didn't work.
We'll try her
I
again.
agree with you,
We'll
Ryan.
try her again next time.
I will agree with you.
All right. So on that note, there's a lot of stuff we got to work on.
There is.
to
I get your frustration.
To get ahead of everything that's coming, because it's not coming in a year. It's coming in.
You're right. And I'm not trying to put cold water on it. And
Whole historic area.
I'm probably more transparent than I need to be. Your guys' concerns are great, and the ability and the desire for you all to help is super. And I need to be reflective of your desire to help and not be critical whenever it's the statement of not qualified. I'm not trying to be mean about it. I'm just trying to save a lot of you all and everybody else a lot of work that may not hit the mark. So, but I think everybody here has the same desire to have a great quality product, and how the heck do we get there in a fast way? And everybody's like, I can help. And that's super awesome, but sometimes, unfortunately, it doesn't go faster than it can. I'm just as frustrated as you are, so we'll get there. So I'll stop babbling at this point.
All right, anybody have anything else they want to add?
I move to adjourn.
All right,
I second.
all in favor? Aye. So adjourned. Thank you to everyone.